The views, topics, and opinions expressed in this video are for entertainment purposes only. All commentary is alleged under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1970.
Stormi stepped into that TikTok live with a clear objective: dominate attention, convert energy into sales, and prove that her brand could operate at a high level under pressure. A 48-hour live is not casual content. It is a high-stakes endurance event, blending entertainment, marketing, logistics, and real-time customer experience into one continuous performance. And from the very first moments, the cracks began to show. What should have been a controlled, well-rehearsed rollout immediately turned into visible chaos. And the most telling part is not that things went wrong, it's how unprepared the system around her was to respond when they did. Right out of the gate, the audio failed. Viewers flooded the comments, saying they could only hear static. That moment matters more than it might seem on the surface. In live commerce, the first few minutes are critical. This is when viewers decide whether to stay or leave, whether to trust the experience or scroll away. Instead of a smooth, confident opening, Stormi was visibly distressed, trying to troubleshoot in real time while relying on someone off camera to fix the issue. And here's where the structural problem begins to reveal itself. She couldn't fix it herself, and the person responsible wasn't ready. You could hear it in her voice, panic mixed with frustration. She openly admitted that technology isn't her strength, which is fine in isolation. Not every CEO or personality needs to be technical. But if that's the case, then the support system behind you has to be airtight. There has to be redundancy, preparation, and accountability. What we saw instead was dependency without reliability. The responsibility was placed on one individual, and when that system failed, there was no immediate backup plan. Eventually, the audio came back. And yes, technical issues happen. Even experienced creators and production teams run into glitches. But the difference between a minor hiccup and a major disruption is preparation. A simple sound check, a pre-live rehearsal, or even a contingency protocol could have prevented that moment from escalating. Instead, it became the first visible signal to the audience that this operation might not be as polished as it needed to be. Once the sound was restored, Stormi tried to regain control of the energy. She shifted into performance mode, hyping the audience, setting the tone, and preparing for the product reveal. And visually, everything looked right. The set design was elegant, soft, and clearly curated with intention. It communicated brand identity: feminine, warm, inviting. That part worked. The environment was not the problem. The issue was what happened when the actual business mechanics kicked in. The product launch moment should have been the payoff. This is where anticipation turns into revenue. The audience is watching, engaged, ready to buy. Stormi introduces the featured item, bringing in the collaborator to explain it, building emotional connection and driving desire. Everything is aligned, except for one critical detail. The wrong product is pinned on the screen. This is where a mistake becomes a serious operational failure. Viewers are being told about one product, but they're being shown another in the purchase interface. And in live commerce, that disconnect is dangerous. Customers are making quick decisions. They're clicking, adding to cart, and checking out in real time. If the wrong item is displayed, people will buy the wrong thing. And once that happens, the damage isn't just immediate. It extends into refunds, complaints, and long-term trust issues. You could see the realization hit Stormi in real time. The moment she understood what was happening, her reaction was instant and emotional. That wasn't just frustration, it was recognition of consequences. She knew exactly what this meant. Customers would feel misled, orders would be incorrect, and ultimately, the responsibility would fall on her, not the team behind the scenes. That's the core tension here. When you are the face of a brand, every failure, no matter where it originates, becomes yours. The audience doesn't separate the CEO from the technician, or the host from the back-end operator. To them, it's one system, and in that moment, that system broke. She even verbalized it. She acknowledged that people would think they were buying one thing when they were actually purchasing another. That's not a small error. And in a high-energy sales environment like a TikTok Live, those expectations are everything. What makes this situation more complex is the pattern being hinted at. This wasn't framed as an isolated incident. There were references to previous customer complaints, issues with fulfillment, and general disorganization within the brand's operations. When a single mistake happens, audiences can forgive it. When it aligns with a pattern, it reinforces doubt. And this is where the psychological dimension comes into play. Stormi is clearly someone who holds high standards. We've seen her push external collaborators hard, demanding excellence, rejecting subpar work, and insisting on quality. But what's being questioned here is whether that same level of scrutiny is being applied internally to her own team. There's a noticeable imbalance. When dealing with outside vendors, the expectations are strict, the feedback is direct, and the accountability is immediate. But internally, the same level of discipline doesn't seem to be consistently enforced. And that creates a gap between vision and execution. Because make no mistake, the vision is there. The branding, the ambition, the scale of the live event, all of that indicates someone who understands the opportunity in front of them. But vision without operational control leads to exactly what we saw, moments of brilliance interrupted by preventable breakdowns. The pinned product issue wasn't just a technical oversight. It was a coordination failure. It suggests that the team didn't have a synchronized run-of-show plan. There should have been a clear sequence: which product is introduced, when it's pinned, how it's described, and how the transition happens. That level of coordination requires rehearsal, communication, and leadership alignment. Instead, it felt reactive. Decisions were being made in real time, corrections were happening midstream, and the host was left to manage both the performance and the crisis simultaneously. That's not sustainable, especially in a 48-hour format where fatigue will only amplify mistakes. And then there's the emotional layer. Stormi tried to hold it together, but the frustration was visible. She attempted to stay composed, but the tension was building. That's another critical factor in live content. When the host begins to lose composure, the audience feels it. It shifts the energy from excitement to discomfort. At one point, it became clear that she was trying to internalize the frustration, recognizing that outward reactions could make things worse. That's a level of self-awareness that matters, but it also highlights the pressure she was under. She wasn't just hosting a live, she was carrying the weight of the brand's performance in that moment. And this raises a bigger question. Does her team truly have her back? Support isn't just about being present. It's about being prepared, competent, and aligned with the mission. It's about anticipating problems before they happen and having solutions ready when they do. What we saw suggests that while there are people around her, the structure and discipline required for an operation of this scale might not be fully in place. There's also the issue of role clarity. Not everyone on that set appeared to have a clearly defined function. Some were there for support, some for marketing, some for technical roles, but the boundaries and responsibilities didn't seem tightly managed. In high-performance environments, ambiguity leads to mistakes. Everyone needs to know exactly what they're responsible for, and there needs to be a chain of command when things go wrong. Another layer to this is the audience expectation. TikTok live shopping has evolved. Viewers are no longer just watching, they're participating, purchasing, and evaluating in real time. They expect a seamless experience, they expect accuracy, and when those expectations aren't met, they respond immediately, often publicly. That's why the comment section became such an important signal. People were confused, asking questions, pointing out discrepancies. That feedback loop is instant, and it can either help you correct course or amplify the problem. In this case, it did both. It alerted the host to the issue, but it also exposed the scale of the confusion. From a business standpoint, the implications are significant. Incorrect orders lead to customer service overload, refund requests, negative reviews, and potential reputational damage. And in a competitive market, trust is one of the most valuable assets a brand can have. Once it starts to erode, it's difficult to rebuild. But it's not all negative. There are clear strengths here: the ability to command attention, the willingness to take risks, the investment in branding and presentation. Those are not small things. Many brands never reach this level of visibility or engagement. The challenge is converting that potential into consistent execution. This situation is a case study in the gap between ambition and infrastructure. Stormi is operating at a level that demands professional-grade systems, but the back-end support doesn't yet fully match that scale. And until that alignment happens, these kinds of issues will continue to surface. The takeaway isn't that failure happened. Failure is inevitable in live environments. The real takeaway is how preventable many of these issues were. Audio checks, product synchronization, rehearsals, these are standard practices in any production setting. Their absence suggests either a lack of planning or a breakdown in communication. And ultimately, the responsibility circles back to leadership. Not because every mistake is her fault, but because leadership defines the standard. It determines how teams are built, how processes are enforced, and how accountability is maintained. If there's one thing this live made clear, it's that Stormi is at a crossroads. The brand has the visibility, the audience, and the potential to scale even further. But scaling requires structure. It requires systems that can support the weight of that growth. Because moments matter. In live commerce, you don't get to rewind. You don't get to edit. Every second is public, and every mistake is amplified. The opportunity is massive, but so is the risk. And what we witnessed wasn't just a difficult live. It was a real-time test of whether the foundation behind the brand is strong enough to support its ambition. Right now, the answer feels uncertain. But with the right adjustments, the right accountability, and a more disciplined operational approach, that narrative could shift. The question is whether those changes will happen before the next big moment arrives.